wrecks, we had them. Remember locomotive number 1? It wrecked. It fell into the river. Believe it or not, they were able to restore it, put it back together again, and then they sold it right after that. I wonder why. But the most famous wreck of all was the Daddy Bryson wreck. It took place on the 30th day of June, 1909. And there was a party or something, so they say, going on in Elkmont. Now remember I said these chaise locomotives are very, very slow. And he had 5 carloads of logs to bring back down to Elkmont. And he's up Jake's Creek. And he's going, if I have to go back up and get he's only supposed to bring down 3 at a time. And if I have to go back up to get those last 2, I'm going to miss almost all the party. All right, boys, put all 5 on. We're going to do it. He starts down the hill. It starts to rain. Now we've got steel wheels and steel track and water. Not a good combination. No worries, boys. We've got sand in the sand dome. Pulls the lever. Nothing comes out. Uh-oh. It's going faster and faster and faster. Now there's 4 people on. We got engineer, Daddy, we got the fireman, and 2 brakemen. Now the way this is going, they're going backwards, and the log cars, all 5 of them are pushing this locomotive. It's going so fast that pieces of the locomotive start flying off. And they hit that curve, and the whole train comes flying off. Now, when they hit that curve, Daddy and one of the brakemen, they jump to the right. The fireman and the other brakeman jump to the left. The 2 on the left survive. Daddy hits the ground, and he survives initially, and then all those logs came down. And that's what did poor Daddy in. Now, 30th day of June, 1909. The next day, 1st of July, 1909, is the first scheduled passenger train. And it's also 4th of July weekend. So here comes everybody in their finest, the ladies in their white dresses and the guys with their straw hats. So what do you do when you come out there? Well, you go out to the wreck and you get your picture taken. So, logging oddities. One of them was a swinging bridge. This was just to the right of Meg's Falls. No train ran on that. What they did was they had a overhead skidder that pulled itself up, and then it would lower log cars down 1 at a time and bring the empties up 2 at a time. Here in the foreground is Jim Shelton's family. This is a Jim Shelton photograph. That's the way the notch looks now. You can see it this time of year because there's no foliage on the trees. And there's also the cable laying on the ground on the roadside of the river. First car ever to come into the mountains was a Model T Ford fitted with railroad wheels. And that is Joe Murphy at the wheel. He is the superintendent of the railroad. His job is to go out and inspect the tracks every day, and so that's his car to do it in. Now they also had a Studebaker Greyhound bus that they also fitted with railroad wheels. Now why did they need this? Well, when they went up into the Tremont area, the grade was too steep for the rod locomotives to get up to where the hotel was, because the hotel was up all the way at the end of the road. And the chaise are too slow. So we've got Little River Railroad Company, and everybody gets in, and they have a trunk in the back. You can see the trunk back here, and they put all their luggage in the trunk, and they head on up to the hotel. How did the loggers live? Well, remember the chaise are slow, so commuting with a chaise is not going to be good. So they built these houses that are 9 feet by 12 feet. In the middle of the roof is a hole. There's a corresponding hole on the floor, and below the holes are 2 crossed steel rods going from corner to corner. The log loader can drop a hook through the hole, through the other hole, hook onto the rods and pick it up, and then they can set it on a flat car, as you can see here. Then they take it off up into the mountains, and they set them off on the side, which is how they got the name of set-off house. And when they strung those houses together, that was called a string town. And this is a string town that's just up above Tremont. Here's where the houses where they lived. These buildings here support the logging operations. We think that this one was a sawyer's office, or whatever you want to call it, where he would sharpen axes and saws. And you see the kids playing over here, and this is already an abandoned or pulled up siding. This is a colorized lantern slides. Lantern slides were used to project, it was before they had slide projectors. And the lantern slide could be put onto this machine, it could be projected up on the wall. The detail in this photograph is unreal. This white dot that you see right here, if you zoom in on it, you can see it's a lady with a baby on her hip. It's just incredible. This is the hotel in Tremont. This is the engine house in Tremont. This is the community center. It served three purposes. It was a church, it was a school, and it was a movie theater. So they call it the House of Salvation, Education, and Damnation. It did. The end of the line. 110 has the honor of pulling the last carloads of logs out of the park. And here, remember Joe Murphy, that young man, that dashing young man sitting behind the wheel of the flivver? This is Joe, right here. And Marvin Doc Tipton, Colonel Townsend has been gone now for 3 years. And so these three men are running the operation. And that is the last log to go through the sawmill. It was a cherry log, by the way. Little River Railroad and Lumber Company wore out 10 locomotives, 3 log loaders, 5 overhead skidders, 2 steam shovels, 75 flat cars, and they employed over 1,000 people. Now, a lot of people say, I think my grandfather or whatever worked for the railroad. Do you have any records? Unfortunately, no, because the Tiptons took, when they closed everything down, they took all the records and dumped them into the river. Sadly. Here we see a log loader sitting on a flat car and a shay right next to it. Company offices in the background, and it's waiting its disposition. CCC camps spring up all throughout the park. Buildings are used for other purposes or abandoned. Here we see the company offices, and you can see there's no more railroads left. That's the road now, where the railroad was. This little building here was the pump house to fill water from the little river to fill the log pond. The sawmill sits idle, and 110, the beautiful 110, is sold to the Smoky Mountain Railroad. That was actually the Knoxville, Sevierville, and Eastern Railroad. The people who rode on it called it the Knoxville Slow and Easy. Eventually, 110 gets abandoned on the side in Seymour, and a man by the name of Terry Bloom sees it sitting there. And Terry decides to figure out who owns it. He buys it. He takes it to Indiana initially, restores it, gets thrown out of Indiana, so he moves to Michigan. And today, 110 still lives and is the Little River Railroad of Coldwater, Michigan. It now has more miles in Michigan than it did the whole time it was in East Tennessee. The rail fans love it, by the way.
Do you know what year he bought that?
Pardon me?
Do you know what year he bought that?
No, I don't, off the top of my head. I'm going to guess sometime in the 60s, maybe 70s. This is the depot that was in Townsend, and it says used clothing for sale. The Wonderland Hotel, notice the mailbox sitting out front. It was actually postal delivery in Elkmont. And this is the way the Wonderland looked on the last day that anybody stayed there in 1992. It would be the end of the season, probably sometime in September, maybe October. And it's now, everybody kind of walks away. There was an annex, and the annex had a beautiful stone chimney and fireplace. I took this picture in 2003, and the park has had to put a chain link fence around the Wonderland because it's starting to fall in on itself. Well, how could it fall in on itself in 10 years, 11 years? Well, we found out that through its history, they put 5 roofs on the hotel, never took the old ones off. So now we got the weight of all this stuff, and it just was too much, and it just started to give away. So I think it was in 2007, the park tore it down. And it took, this is the steps that went over to the annex, and this was the fireplace that sat in the lobby. And this is a number of years later. Those are the steps that go over to the annex, and the fireplace is that pile of bricks over there. The fountain that was out front, a lot of growth in it. What happened to the annex? Oh my, it burned down. Nobody knows why it burned. Well, fire, obviously. But nobody knows who was responsible for it or how it happened. Speculation says that somebody was illegally camping in it, started a fire in the fireplace, and maybe the chimney didn't work, and it just went all over the place. They beat it, and the thing just burned to the ground. This was the Appalachian Club in 2003. The original Appalachian Club burned in 1931. The park gave permission to rebuild the Appalachian Club in 1934, and it was rebuilt much, much smaller. No second story, and basically all it was dining facilities. It was restored, and you can rent it for day use now. No cooking, no overnight. Not cheap either. The depot in Walland, this is after all the railroads have been pulled up. I think somebody was actually living in it, because you can see that it's got a chimney up here. And it got moved over to Townsend, where it now becomes part of the Little River Railroad and Lumber Company Museum. And this is really an old photo because these trees here are huge now. This water tower was the water supply for the town of Walland for quite a while. They built an engine house here. They have a Shay locomotive that actually ran on the Little River. They've got a set-off house, a log loader, the depot, and it's a replica of the Elkmont post office. Really nice museum. Okay, a little bit of timeline here. 1901 to 1908, construction of Townsend buildings and logging of the west prong towards Cades Cove. 1905 to 1908 took 3 years to build the railroad from Townsend out to Elkmont. So the road that you drive on going between Elkmont and Townsend was the Little River Railroad. Sometime in the early 90s, there was a flood that washed away a lot of the road, and the ties for the railroad were still underneath the asphalt. They begin in 1925 construction of the middle prong up towards Tremont. In 1926, All of the Elkmont area is logged out. And during the winter of 1926, Colonel Townsend, without getting permission from anybody, pulled up all the rails. Now, there's a couple of reasons why he did this. He was afraid that the Interstate Commerce Commission would force him to keep it going. And the other thing is, he doesn't need to go up there on a daily basis anymore because there's no more logging. And the Appalachian Club people only come from Memorial Day to Labor Day. He's not going to make any money if he has to keep that rail line up. So, without telling anybody, pulls up all the rails. The people come around Memorial Day in 1927 and they go, "Where's our train?" He goes, "Sorry." But he did end up giving the right-of-way to the state so that they could build a road, and they did. Okay, the land is sold in 1927 to the state of Tennessee. They retained cutting rights for 15 years. He could have gone to 1942 by this contract, but everything was finished by 1939. He took out anything 15 inches in diameter or larger he was allowed to take. In 1934, the park is established. In 1940, all logging operations are concluded and the park is dedicated. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was here for the dedication. It was Labor Day of 1940. He is the only sitting president ever come to our park, sadly enough. It's been 85 years now since all logging operations have ceased, and most signs of railroading and logging is gone. If you know where to go, you can still find it. Where there once were rails are now our roads and trails. And that brings us to the end of our journey. And I hope you all enjoy.